Hi, it's Kristen, and I am going to recommend you some books. This is the first kind of video like this that I've done, but I'm going to recommend you books based on the idea of if you liked this book, then you should try this book. So the first book I'm going to recommend is a contemporary book, and I'm going to say if you liked Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Melos, then you might like Happy Hour by Marlo Granados. This is set over one summer and is about a young woman who feels quite stuck, a little bit lost in life, and I think those elements are elements that we see in Cleopatra and Frankenstein. Characters just not really like knowing themselves or having tricky relationships with the other people in their life, things just being a bit messy in friendships and relationships. And although these two books don't necessarily match in like plot, they are very much both like character studies, just about the lives of these characters, and I feel like they have similar vibes. I'm basing this off vibes. So if you like stories just about core like two or three characters and we're just following their lives for a certain span of time and just getting into like the messiness of their lives, then I think you might like Happy Hour. Next, we're going mythology retellings. I'm saying if you liked Circe by Madeline Miller, Greek mythology retelling based on the witch Circe, then I would recommend The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. This is Norse mythology, but is about the witch Angrboda. And I think these two have similar vibes. You have the central witch character, you have them and their relationships with like gods around them, like Loki, Hermes, and their relationships with their children. Very central to both of these stories is them becoming mothers and what that means to them, and the tricky relationship with their children that they have to navigate. And yeah, if you like mythology, witches, again, messy relationships. And there's also, I think, moments where they have to come back to their magic or relearn their magic or find new ways to use their magic. And you also have like the narrative of these gods in the background and the effects that they have on these female characters who are like involved in the story but also like slightly outside of these epic tales that are going on, but those tales directly impact these characters' lives. So yes, would recommend that one. Then sticking with the Greek mythology thing, if you liked Electra, which is the story of Electra, Clytemnestra, and Cassandra told by Jennifer Saint, then I think you would like Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. These follow Clytemnestra and her children, and Clytemnestra's marriage to Agamemnon, and like basically the same part of the story of Paris, Helen, Troy, the Trojan War, but told slightly differently, different interpretations. And I think this one does it slightly better, but I also read this one first. I am a big fan of Jennifer Saint still, but yes, I think if you've read one, you could still read the other and I think it's interesting to like compare and contrast how each author interprets different characters and different moments in the story. But I will never stop talking about how much I liked Clytemnestra, so would recommend that. Then, if you liked Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, I think you would like Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This, I'm not under any pretense of thinking this is not a well-known book already, but I see a lot of people talking about like Wendell Bambleby and his relationship and like dynamic with Emily Wilde, and saying they really like their relationship and that aspect of this story, and like where can they find more characters like him. And I think that he is reminiscent of Howl in Howl's Moving Castle. Like, bit magic, very dramatic, wanting to like impress the female characters and sort of like being devoted to them, but in a way that they're just kind of annoying. So if you like Wendell and are interested in his and Emily's relationship and you've not read Howl's Moving Castle, I would say give this a go. They're both quite like cozy fantasy. There are like some stakes, but you never really feel like a sense of genuine danger, I would say, but like very whimsical. While this one follows characters traveling to this town where there's said to be lots of fairies, this one follows characters traveling in a moving castle around this sort of countryside, and there's witches and magic in that regard. So yes. Then if you liked The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling, I think you would like A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon by Sarah Hawley. This one is like one of the first witchy rom-com kind of books I read, and I had fun with it, and there's like a spell gone wrong and this woman accidentally puts a curse on her like ex-boyfriend, which comes into play years later when he returns to the area in which she lives, and they have to sort of like reconcile their past and their renewed attraction to each other and everything that's gone wrong in between. And this one is about a spell gone wrong in which a woman is trying to cast a spell and accidentally summons a demon, and then to get around the fact that this demon is now like attached to her and can't leave her, they decide to fake date to explain why he's always around, so she doesn't have to admit to people that she messed up a spell. So we have female characters who are like struggling with magic a bit, and the men that come into their lives in different ways. But these were both fun, both cute. I think this one deals a little bit more with slightly more serious family dynamics, because although our main character Vivienne has a very supportive, loving family in here, our main character Marielle family are not so supportive in here. So you do have interesting family dynamics in both though. So yeah, just fun witchy romances, and I feel like I see this one talked about more, but personally I prefer this one. And then lastly, I'm gonna do something slightly different to what I normally do and recommend a middle grade. This is a book that I read and loved as a child, and it is A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. Very famous book. Lots of people read it in their childhood, and it's iconic as a kids series. But recently, for a book club that I run at my work, we read the book I'm about to tell you about, and I thought it had like similar elements to what I enjoyed about this as a child, and that is The Swifts by Beth Lincoln. So whilst this is about orphans who get passed around to various different custodians, caregivers who are caring to varying degrees, this one is about a really big family, but the family dynamics are interesting to say the least. So we have orphans going off and having to face mysteries and intrigue surrounding their family. And in here we have a young girl called Shenanigan who has this big family reunion where like every single Swift who lives in the area comes to this house, and there's an ongoing mystery of like a family treasure. And one weekend every like several years they do a big treasure hunt trying to find this treasure, and Shenanigan is determined on cracking the case. But during the family gathering, someone is murdered. So we do have that, you know, kids dealing with death element, with those mysteries and like a wacky cast of characters. It feels very like theatrical in both of these. And one of the elements that really stood out to me personally is the way in which I think Lemony Snicket writes using big words sometimes, but he will explain in the text what those words mean, and it doesn't ever feel patronizing. And I always felt like I learned a lot and I like improved my vocabulary reading A Series of Unfortunate Events and all the books in that series. And this one very much centers on words and meanings of words, because our main character, as I said, is called Shenanigan, and every member of the Swift family has a name that is from the dictionary. It's like in their family rules that when like a baby is born, a new member of the family is born, the parents will go through the dictionary and be like, that is my child's name. So pretty much everyone in this book has a quirky name. We have Phenomena, we have twins Flora and Fauna, we have Schadenfreude, we have Candor, and you learn a lot about their names and what those words mean. And there's like a whole thing around the family dictionary and Shenanigan not identifying with her name because she doesn't want to be seen as someone who gets up to shenanigans and is, you know, misbehaving or doesn't have like good connotations to her name, whereas other characters do. And she gets very wrapped up in the meaning of her name and the meaning of words, etc. So I think the like learning big words, improving vocabulary thing I see in both of these. And again, just like quirky characters, mystery, murder, what's going on. And I enjoyed this as an adult. I enjoyed reading it, but I do think, you know, I would recommend it to a younger reader generally, as it is intended for. So there we have it. We have some middle grade recommendations, we have some mythology recommendations, we have some witchy fantasy recommendations, and those are my recommendations. Let me know down below if you have read any of these. Do you think you'll look into any of the recommendations I've given? Do you have any books that you think match with these recommendations that I haven't mentioned? If you think you could like pick out a good book that you would compare to Emily Wilde, or a book that you would compare to A Series of Unfortunate Events, do let me know down below. And I will see you soon with another video. Bye!